Hi, I'm Jose Tijerín, and in this tutorial I'm going to show you the basics of the new dynamic wrinkle system. I'll mainly focus on the different and fantastic cartoon effects that we can do with this system to create dynamic facial wrinkles. Character Creator has revolutionized the way we create emotions in our characters, and as artists you know that conveying the emotions that our characters are feeling is vital to tell a story. So in that aspect, facial wrinkles are not just superficial detail, and their importance is even greater in cartoon characters. But before starting with the content of the tutorial, it's highly recommended that you have first seen my two previous tutorials on the official Reallusion YouTube channel, Classic 2D Disney Animation Style. In them you can see the basics to create a good 3D base model so that our cartoon models have no technical problems and look professional. Let's start the tutorial by establishing how the dynamic wrinkle system works, and for this I've prepared some example anatomical textures that you can get by taking a screenshot of them. As you can see, these are schematic anatomical drawings in which the main facial muscles that shape facial expressions are represented. Unfortunately, there is no time to talk in depth about how the wrinkles that form facial expressions are formed anatomically. However, I highly recommend you read Anatomy of Facial Expressions and Form of the Head and Neck by Aldous Zarens. These books are focused on explaining in depth all these topics, but they are intended for artists, and in them you will find illustrations like these. Let's start by placing the textures in the right place, and I'm going to use one of the base characters from the Human Anatomy package, and I'm going to go to the Material List section. Always before starting to work with the dynamic wrinkles, we must establish what will be the final facial material. The reason is that the system takes this material as a base, and if we modify it, we will have to do the same with each of the facial textures. Once this is done, we will go to the Expression Wrinkles menu, and we will activate it. This character was not prepared for the wrinkle system, but as you can see, making the conversion is just a simple matter of a click and selecting the Facial Profile CC4 Extended. Now, if we go down to the Expression Wrinkles menu, we can find the three sets of textures in which Character Creator includes all the dynamic wrinkles. Place each texture in its place, and to see the result, go to the Motion section next to the timeline at the bottom. In the drop-down menu, select Wrinkle Check, and within this, Functional Inspection. Now you can see how each facial morph that morphs an expression is linked to an area of one of the dynamic wrinkle textures. In this way, the higher the intensity of a facial morph, the more intensely the area of the designated texture will be displayed. Each red dot indicates, roughly speaking, which muscles is involved in that facial expression, and an arrow indicates the direction in which it contracts, which is something very useful to know where or why wrinkles are positioned on the face. As you can see in the animation, not only the diffused textures we have just added are activated. By default, Character Creator adds diffuse, normal, and roughness textures on top of our base face textures, and let's use another project to see how you can customize all these layers quickly. First we'll go to the bottom in the Texture Settings section. When we click on any of the empty layers, the Individualize button will be activated, and clicking on the Character Creator generates a texture that combines our base texture with its wrinkle textures. Most of the time we won't need to do this since we will create our dynamic wrinkles from scratch. And let's see a quick example using a character with a realistic finish. You'll see how easily it is to get realistic wrinkles without the need to do complex texture edits using AI. The first thing we have to do is remove the lighting from the model. And the easiest way is to go to the Visual menu and activate the Toon Shader menu. In it, we're going to lower to 0 the parameters of edge and to leave blank the colors of shade and light in the paint section. In this part, remember to hide all the elements that are covering the head for a better result. And once this is done, we only have to take a screenshot of the front face of our character and go to an AI that can generate images from a base image and a prompt. In my case, I will use a free AI like Stable Diffusion, and specifically the Easy Diffusion version. I intend to make more forehead wrinkles, so I just have to describe my character and the expression I want after adding the capture I just made. As you can see, with a prompt strength of 0.4, the result is fabulous. To find out which image set we should upload the retouched texture to, we can go to the bottom of the Texture Settings section and click on the Find Wrinkle Masks button. This will open a folder with a series of templates showing the areas affected by each texture set. However, I prefer to go into the Wrinkle Masks folder and look for the expression I want to create. In this case, as you will see, the mask we're looking for is Brown Drop. When we find it, we can use it to know which set it belongs to, which in this case is set 2, and which is the exact area it affects. Now we only have to download the image we want to and go to an image editing program like ClipStudio, where we will join our base textures with the one we just generated. Once this is done, we are going to create the normal texture from this texture. In my case, I'm going to flip the image first, as the normals I'm going to generate will be inverted. I'm also going to increase the thickness and depth of the wrinkles to make it look better. And once this is done, we only have to generate the texture of normals. We can obtain it easily with a converter like Normal Map online, and we only have to upload the image we have just edited by clicking on the batch mode. After choosing the intensity of the normals, we only have to download it and do the same process as with the image generated with AI. As I was saying, and you can see clearly here, the normal texture is inverted and does not match the normal texture of our character. In this case, we just have to flip it horizontally and cut out only the area where the wrinkles we want to show are. To apply it and quickly see how it works, go to Character Creator and activate the option Check with Expressions. This way, by clicking on the area we are working on in the schematic face, which we have above, we can see the result in our model. Right now it has the automatic dynamic wrinkles, but we're going to add ours by clicking twice on the corresponding texture set. And that's it. As you can see, the difference is quite noticeable. This is mainly because the AI has a reference, in this case, many old women similar to our character. Therefore, the AI has shown us that these should be some of the possible wrinkles that should be generated in a character like ours. Well, after this brief overview of how the dynamic wrinkles system essentially works, let's go deeper into the subject of the tutorial. As I said at the beginning, I have separated the cartoon styles into 4 according to their technical section. According to their difficulty, I have ordered them as Cartoon Unlit style, Classic 3D Disney or Pixar style, Cell shading, and Anime style. This character is one of the main characters of the video game I'm currently working on. You can already add to your Steam wishlist From the Streets to the Script, a Cara Banchel's story. Let's start with a style that is characterized by its digital painting look, which brings artistic and painterly looks to the amazing animation. In this tutorial, I've called this cartoon style Unlit, but you can call it a painterly style as well. This digital painting style is relatively new to animation and has become more popular with the rise of computer graphics technology and the ability to produce detailed and realistic images. The digital brushstroke technique is used to give a more organic look to animation and is achieved through the use of digital tools that simulate the look of traditional paint and the texture of brushes. Specifically, the Arcane series replicates the aesthetics of textures that video games such as League of Legends use on their characters. Painting details on the 3D characters in video games allows low poly models to have higher quality and attractiveness, and this by combining elements of digital painting with other styles such as Art Deco, Art Nouveau, and Steampunk. The series achieves a distinctive and striking visual look. Although this type of style has complex lighting and effects work, I'm going to use the characters Unlit. Achieving this effect is very easy if you don't want to hand paint the characters because of how tedious it can be. You can always take a capture of your 3D model and use an AI, like in this case, ControlNet, an extension created for Stable Diffusion that extracts the outline of the figures of an image and takes them as a reference along with a prompt to create an image. In my case, I opted for a system that is commonly used, the Bake Mesh Maps. If we use Substance Painter, we only have to go to the Texture Set Settings menu and click on the Bake Mesh Maps button. This allows us to obtain the volume of the model from several textures in just a few seconds. As you can see, one of the textures generated is the ambient occlusion, and the result is already fantastic. We can also use the Substance technology to calculate an illumination that tints the texture, simulating that the model is being illuminated. This effect is called Baked Light, and I recommend that you edit the effect so that your character does not look like plastic. If you go to the Properties Filterer section in the Material menu, lower the Dielectric Reflectance to 0. Then we will lower the intensity of the volume by going to the menu just below called Sun Sky and setting all the colors to white. As you can see now, the volume of the model we see in the diffused texture is much more subtle, natural, and pleasant. As a final touch, you can apply the Blur Slope effect and we will have a very nice brushstroke effect. Doing this at such a high speed allows me to texture many more characters and maintain an aesthetic coherence between all of them. The paint finish can be of many types, but if you look, they all have the same base for the illumination of the textures. A base of diffused white light that illuminates the entire character in such a way that a real ambient light can be added to cast shadows on the face. In the case of Arcane, thanks to this technique, they get a very characteristic illumination in the area of the dark circles under the eyes, and they keep it whatever the light of the scene. In my case, I have opted for something, a finish with much less volume and without additional lighting, but the way to paint the facial expressions is the same. The first thing we are going to do will be, as always recommended, model sheets containing several of the facial expressions that characterize our character. If you don't have this scheme in each of your characters, most likely they will all end up having more or less the same facial expressions and will lose a lot of attractiveness. And as you can see, I've already decided what should be the expression and the wrinkles that my character should have when he frowns. Back in the character creator, having already customized the facial expressions of this example, I'm going to export the character, choosing the option character with current pose. And now I'm going to go to a texture creation program like Substance Painter, and I'm going to put these base diffuse texture of the character's face. Once this is done, I only have to paint over the wrinkles, taking into account what we have commented previously about the illumination. As you can see, the process is really simple, so we can create all the wrinkles with this method in a very short time. The process is much more advisable than painting the wrinkles directly on the texture, since the deformation of the 3D mesh makes it difficult to guess how our wrinkles will be when the rest is deformed. As a last tip, I will tell you that the cartoon wrinkles are usually hard and without much volume, like a stroke. Otherwise, it will give the impression that the skin is not elastic and that the grooves it generates are huge. Back to character creator, as we've already seen, we will activate the dynamic wrinkle system and I will load the image I just created in texture set 2. Done, we can activate the check with expressions to see the final result, but we see that the texture seems to be in a low opacity. This is because, fortunately, the dynamic wrinkle system offers the option to calculate how fast the wrinkle textures appear when we increase the percentage of the corresponding facial deformation. I like my cartoon characters to have very marked and legible expressions for the viewer, so I'm going to increase the rate of appearance almost to the maximum so that the wrinkle texture appears as soon as possible on his face. As you can see now, the intensity of the texture is much higher, and using the facial profile editor, the system works great. But let's go now to the next more traditional style that 3D cartoon renders are shown in the film and video game productions. If in the previous style we had full control of the lighting through the texture, in this case the texture has no lighting at all, and the character is only illuminated by the ambient light of the scene. Wrinkle Essentials offers us professional content with high quality textures that are essential to make the wrinkles and creases of our characters look amazingly realistic visually. But to us, this package is also a very useful tool for creating 3D cartoon characters. Reillusion has given the same importance to cartoon characters and offers us a multitude of facial wrinkle variations that emphasize the unique attributes of our characters. Look in particular at the notch section. Each style comes with its own unique notch profile, which gives us a very useful repertoire when customizing where to choose what style of finish we want our projects to have. If we purchase the Essential Wrinkles pack, you can download it and use it by going to the pack section. And when you click on it, you will see a huge amount of options. We are interested in the ones at the end, which are the cartoon wrinkles that we have seen before on the web. Let's apply a random wrinkle pack to see how it works. When applying it, in my case, it does not seem that the wrinkles have volume, and this is due to a very common fault in the cartoon characters that we create in Character Creator. As the normals of the character are realistic and do not serve us for our character, we usually remove them without replacing them with normal cartoon textures. Having no normal texture to apply, the normals of the dynamic wrinkles cannot be applied and displayed. The solution, as you can see, is simple. Just take the normals that the program brings by default and blur them. Now the system works and looks great, although our character does not look at all like the one in the example. And as we have seen, inside the package not only comes packs of dynamic wrinkles, but also morphs with which we can edit in detail the wrinkles that are formed when smiling. To use them, we only have to go back to the Facial Profile Editor menu and go to the Mouth Base section. If we edit the first of the options in the list with the sliders we are talking about, which can be found in the Modify menu, under Actor/Head/Expression/Smile, we will adjust the smile very precisely. It should be noted that these adjustments can also be made with realistic characters, and the result is just as accurate. Now, the most interesting thing, in my opinion, is that we can extract the wrinkle normals, as we have done previously with the diffuse textures, by checking on the Individualize button. If we work with them on top of the diffuse maps of the dynamic wrinkles that we have previously customized, we can adjust the normals without problems and obtain a much better result in a short amount of time. Ideally, you should have several normal maps at hand to choose the shapes that best suit your template, which in this case is the fuzzy map. Keep in mind that the way the normal map works, you cannot flip or rotate the shapes of the wrinkles, as the result will not be good. Instead, try to deform them slightly to make them fit, and check the result inside Character Creator to make sure it looks good. As you can see, the result is as excellent as the professional Reallusion dynamic wrinkles we used. Finally, if we want to go a step further, we can create our own normals modeling. For example, the wrinkles of the smile with ZBrush, separating the head and raising the polygon subdivision. When finished, this program allows us, previously lowering the subdivision to 0, to create maps of normals at high resolution. That said, we finish with this style and move on to the new cell shading style. From the most classic line drawing style to the most modern, we can imagine animation throughout its history has opted to define characters through lines, not only because of its essence of illustration, or because of the facilities it has always provided at a technical level. As you may already know, although there are now a greater number of 3D film productions, 2D animation is not dead and is still the benchmark for films that want to make their 3D animation feel emotional and powerful, to the point that the big studios use it to correct the 3D animation that we love so much here. The lines and flat colors of these characters make them very legible on screen without losing attractiveness, and that is what we're going to recreate here with just a couple of steps. The first thing, obviously, is to apply to the scene the cartoon effect that we like the most of those that Character Creator brings. To apply the effect, you have to go to the Stage section, and inside go to the Atmosphere, Stylize, and finally Tune Shader template. The only thing to emphasize here is that you should not forget that these effects can be edited, giving us the possibility that the line has a unique color or is colored according to the area in which it is located. The latter option is very often seen in modern 2D productions. It gives a lighter and nicer finish than the black line. As you can see, it serves to emphasize the lighting of the scene and make it more vibrant. Another of its qualities is that if in our production the characters and the background have the same line time, the effect separates both elements better, improving the readability of the image. Nowadays, this line coloring can not only be found in 2D productions, as we have already said, it is already increasingly common for 3D productions to imitate the finish of 2D animation. A good example of this finish in a movie created in 3D is the Mitchells vs. the Machines. In the movie, as in the productions that I will talk about later, the use of colored lines stands out a lot, to which they have also applied various effects to make them more vibrant and pleasant, trying to simulate the stroke made by the human hand. However, in this tutorial, I will use both styles to cover as much as possible. Then we just need to extract the diffuse maps of the facial expressions we just applied and edit the images to replace the shadows of the wrinkles with light lines of the color you are using for the line. Remember also that the sketches of facial expressions are the main reference to create these lines. As you can see, the result we get are more marked and striking facial expressions, so be careful with putting more lines than necessary. On the other hand, you can also use expression lines that do not simulate real wrinkles. A good example of this is the graphic solutions we can find in manga. In this case, the lines on the forehead accentuate a lot of expression of fury that we also enhance with the wrinkles on the nose. This would be the most obvious way of using lines to achieve dynamic wrinkles. However, let's go much further. In the Spider-Verse movies, all kinds of graphic methods were used to achieve this unique finish inspired by comic books and modern illustrations. The way they decided to apply the lines is by means of what they call implants on the face and hands of the characters that are modified according to the camera shot. They are first adjusted by hand, and then using machine learning to predict the rest of the frames and result in a correct and fluid movement. To create the facial expressions defined by lines, a technique was used that allows them to place lines as 3D elements fixed to the surface of the face. This offers great freedom when animating, since these lines are completely deformable and can be placed anywhere you want to offer maximum versatility. The union between this technique and the previous one with a more traditional render can be seen in the magnificent work that was carried out in the production of The Sea Beast. In this project, they wanted to combine the technique used in the production of Spider-Verse, but to their own style. The black lines you see in this case do not appear in the final shot. Here they are used by the camera, which projects them onto the surface of the face, and then carves along the depth of the surface normals. You can clearly see the added normals on the right side of the image, and the result is really amazing, and you can see that in this way they have been able to place the wrinkles freely. Additionally, this technique has now allowed them to run a large polygonal load, which on wrinkled characters like the one you see here could be a very high polygon count compared to other characters. We're going to try and imitate this result in the facial expressions thanks to character creator tools, but first I have to make an aside. I need to show you a system I have invented that will be the basis for the rest of the tutorial. Let me introduce it by showing you how to make Manpu. Manpu can be literally translated as comic symbol. These are symbols that are placed next to a character in manga to clearly and comically show a character's feelings. There's a whole range of comic symbols, such as beads of sweat, striped lines on the face, or veins about to burst with anger, and let me show you the trick to create these symbols and make them appear on the face of our character, as if they were just another custom animation. Let's first send the character to ZBrush, although we could do all this with character creator's own tools, and once there, we will leave only the dentures in sight because, as we saw in the previous tutorials, cartoons often stylize the teeth of their characters. It is not aesthetically pleasing to draw tooth by tooth, and also from a distance, the lines that define the teeth would make the teeth more black than white. To do this, we will remove the teeth and use the gums as solid prosthesis after modeling them a little. By doing this, our character is more cartoonish and leaves us the possibility to use the teeth that we have separated. More specifically, we're going to use only the upper teeth, as they are the only 3D elements of our character that do not move. We're going to flatten the teeth to get flat 3D shades, and then we're going to take the character back to Character Creator. Perfect! Now we're going to activate the Facial Profile Editor menu, and we're going to go to the bottom of the menu. There we will click on the Go Z button to edit or create in ZBrush a facial expression. Now that we are back in ZBrush, the magic begins. We're going to shape the teeth to have the shape of an anime Manpu. If we give the teeth thick line shapes by moving the polygons, we can put them all together and combine them to create more complex shapes, as in this case, the symbol of the swollen vein that appear on the forehead of the characters when they get angry. As you can see, the quality is unbeatable since not working with images but 3D objects, the icon does not pixelate no matter how big it is made. Then we add it as a custom expression, and that's it. Obviously, one thing to keep in mind is that even when we have a slider for this expression, we should only use it in a value of 0 or 100. Otherwise, we would see the shape appearing from inside the skull and the trick would be visible. We can continue making shapes. It doesn't matter if we make them more complicated. We have enough teeth to make more complex symbols, and even if we want, we could have some colored teeth to form colored symbols. In this Mamai symbol you are looking at, not only do we need a lot of teeth to shape the symbol, we also need to get the eyes to be blank to get the effect right. For these, we need to create a morph in which the eyeballs are turned upside down. And we can do this manually with the Edit Mesh tools that Character Creator already has, and the effect looks great. With this in mind, let's get down to defining facial expressions using these teeth turned into lines. We can make the lines representing the facial wrinkles as we have done so far, painting over the diffused textures of the dynamic wrinkles. But the problem with this is that the line appears and disappears with the opacity, and this, in some cases, may not look quite right. The process is exactly the same, but this time we have to choose one of the morphs that constitute an existing expression. Remember that what we're going to do is to add lines to enhance each facial expression, and remember that if we use teeth for wrinkles, we should not use them for anime symbols to avoid mistakes. With this technique, we don't need to show dynamic wrinkles, and we can use the system to make other expressions. For example, the blushing of the face. In this way, we check how our character works with the wrinkles on, and if we have to increase the strength of these or decrease it. Let's go now to some special tips. Let's talk about the blushing effect that I have added to this character using the wrinkle system. So this additional emotion of blushing is very useful and adds an extra nuance to the facial expressions. If you noticed before, there is a facial morph that deforms the nasal flaps when the character feels anger, and this particular character is not someone who is going to express anger in that way, and I've decided to replace the corresponding wrinkle with a red tone that I have applied in low opacity on the skin texture. For the trick to work correctly, we must go to the facial profile editor and go to the nose section. The first two sliders correspond to the deformation in question. We don't want that when the character blushes, his nose moves, so we're going to give the minimum value to the deformation, and we're going to save it so that it becomes the maximum deformation of the mesh. We do the same with the second slider and we can make the character blush easily. It is fantastic the versatility that this system allows. Let's move on to the rendering part of this tutorial and start with the anime style we have seen before. No one is surprised that, of all the animated productions that are consumed, anime is one of the most popular. That is why its visual style has been transferred to other media such as video games that use 3D models, but in recent years, anime productions that are created using 3D have been gaining ground. Let's see how we can achieve a similar result in a short time thanks to iClone. I used a 3D stage in Unreal 5, which we will see later, created by Monkey Red, and I made some screenshots to which I then applied a watercolor filter. If you want to make the scene yourself, you can also get this anime girl along with all the facial expressions we have seen. You can go to the Real Illusion marketplace to purchase it. It is the perfect base to develop your own anime characters. Then I've cropped the image to separate the planes so that the character moves between the two planes and integrates into the scene. Importing the character from Character Creator is really easy, and in iClone itself, we can adjust the colors of the textures to match the background lighting. The result is that in just a few minutes, I've assembled the whole scene in which the character is completely integrated without using lighting. Many people think that you can only do a good animation job with a very powerful rendering engine, but this is not true. Now that the scene is completely set up and I've applied an animation to the character, I'm going to render the shot in iClone, and it's really simple. We just have to choose the frame rate, which in my case will be 25, and the frame size, in which I will choose Ultra HD to have more quality when reducing the video image. And now, after checking that the final frame is the one we want, we only have to click on render. The result takes only a few minutes to render and looks great. We don't even have to use external video editing software to enhance the scene. It looks fantastic. Let's go now to render the character in Unreal Engine 5. I've replaced the anime character with the classic 3D character. That way, even though they are characters with very different elements, they can keep the same animation without the need to make changes. The Unreal project I'm going to use is the same as the anime backgrounds, the Monkey Red restaurant. Before working with Unreal, I installed the latest version of Unreal LiveLink for iClone, an easy to install tool that greatly facilitates the workflow between iClone and Unreal Engine 5. It's a free add-on, as is Auto Setup, which I recommend you also install to save time with the import process. And with both tools installed, we don't have to worry about setting up the materials, and especially in this case, we don't have to worry about the dynamic wrinkle system of Character Creator. After checking that both plugins are activated in our Unreal project, I go to the LiveLink window, and there I click on Source, and within the floating menu, I select iClone LiveLink to create a reference port number. And now the magic happens. If we go to iClone, we can now, with a click of a button, export the whole scene to Unreal in the transfer menu. And if we go to the adjacent link menu, we can have both programs in parallel and connected at the same time. This way, it is very easy to coordinate the animation to fit the scene, and we can quickly check that the dynamic wrinkles have been transferred perfectly. As you can see, these tools allow us to work in parallel and check the result in the powerful Unreal Engine 5 rendering engine. Thanks to this way of working, I can quickly realize that, due to the lighting of the scene, the wrinkles have a volume that is hardly noticeable in the final shot. Rendering the scene in Unreal is just as easy as in iClone. In the menu of our sequence, we click on the clapperboard icon, and in the floating window that appears, we choose the size and output format of our video. As you can see, it is quick and easy to obtain a good result at a professional resolution. I hope you liked this tutorial. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss more tutorials and news.